Welcome back to Roto Moto. My name is Donnie. In this video, I'm going to preview Houston 2, give you guys 5 riders to look for when you are making your PulpMX fantasy picks, tips on picking the FFL, and even a sneak peek at my way to early team set for the round. First, a few housekeeping notes. Number one, this video is gonna be a little underwhelming. It's gonna be a little under edited. It's not gonna look as clean and nice as Houston 1. These Tuesday rounds are a lot. I have to get a lot of work done in a small amount of time, so I am actually just recording almost as if I'm streaming. It's kind of like a podcast with just a visual aid over here. So hopefully that will suffice you guys. 2, before we get started, we always want to review last week's round. This is the normal video format, so let's get on to that. The overall high score went to Green Mountain Flyers with 284 points, who is also a member of the Roto X Fantasy League, so he will take that crown as well. At Houston 1, a record 15,165 players set a lineup for round 1, of which around 7,800 are a member of the Championship League. That data is missing for me, but Marks gave me an estimate. Hopefully I will have that, guys, for you on Twitter soon. A whopping 94.3% worth of pick trends were with a big fat 0. That means that on average, the average team had at least 1 0. Led by 13.3% of players picking Benny Bloss, who wrecked out of a transfer spot in the Heat and couldn't make it through the LCQ, and 21.1% of players picking Jess Pettis, who couldn't make up his mind if he wanted to ride or not and ended up skipping the night show. 1 out of 3 players opted to pick an FFL for the 250s, and 3 out of 10 picked for the 450 class, but a super low success rate. Just 4.6% of those who picked guessed RJ Hampshire, and 13.4% selected Justin Barcia. A perfect round for each one would have seen Varizzi, Thomas Dew, and Hunter Sales in the 250s, and Barcia and Brayton and Entignap in the 450s. Pair these 6 guys with 2 perfect All-Stars for an easy 290 points. My team looked something like this. I had a pretty stellar 250 team. The only way to improve my score was by swapping Logan Carnell for Josh Varizzi, but he was never really on my radar, so I'm not going to beat myself up over it too much. And RJ leaving 5 on the table, but hey, I'm not mad about that 21. The 450s, however, Tickle Florida with double points the entire night, but when the checkers flew, Tick missed out, leaving me 30 short of what Barcia would have been. This one does hurt, as I did have Barcia on my team with a few minutes to go, but decided to go back to my original plan of playing it safe, and obviously I was wrong. I went all team green for my FFLs, and that also did not go my way, dragging my 229 down to a 215. Before we get to Houston 2's picks, I want to talk about today's sponsor, the Roto Moto merch store. Still no official sponsors, but if you would like to support the channel financially, please head over to rotomoto.co, yes, .co, to check out all of the super rad Roto Moto merch, all designed by yours truly. And after that, consider subscribing to the Patreon if you haven't already. This is an entirely privateer operation and made possible by viewers like you. All right, let's get on to Houston 2. The injury report is more of the same from last time. Don't expect to see Lopes out there in the 250s. Jordan Bailey posted on Instagram the date of the first West round, so I'm assuming he is swapping coasts. Word in the pits is that Jess Pettis is going to attempt a lineup for round 2, but be wary of picking him, as he probably won't be at 100%. In the 450s, we are still expecting to miss Max Anstey due to injury. Hill and Baggett are still MIA. Bowers will not race until at least round 7 in Orlando, and McElrath may line up, but I do not think that they're going to rush him. I feel like they are going to wait until at least Indy, maybe even Orlando, for him to make his debut. Justin Bogle, who had a last-minute scratch, is expecting to line up for H2, but I would keep him off of your team until you see him line up for both qualifying sessions. On our recommendations, let's get to the top 5 riders that I want you to look at. My 250 All-Star recommendation is actually to not pick somebody. Do not pick Jet Lawrence. He's going to look super fast every qualifier, and on certain nights this year, he's going to put it together. But Jet is a literal teenager and will make mistakes like all teenagers do. Look at Austin Faulkner in 2017-2018. The kid will fly, but just like I've said 100 times, and most recently in the 10 tips video, there is no reason to take these hot lap, fast, flashy style point All-Stars because their cap is simply only 26 points. A 250 rider that I do want you to look at for Tuesday is Grant Harlan. The Ty Loop Honda rider put in a good showing with a 14th at Houston 1, and that's even with him starting the first lap all the way back in 20th. He debuted in Monster Energy Supercross in 2020, finishing top 15 in 2 of his 3 mains on the season in the East Division. Now in his sophomore season, Grant is the kind of guy I expect to be a top 10 threat every week and should be an easy top 12 with even a decent start. He's not the kind of guy to be flying in qualifying, so don't be concerned if you see his times are outside of those top 15. Our high handicap hero of the round, which I give out to a rider with a handicap of 10 or more every week that I think you should consider if you like making go big or go home, is going to 250 rider Curran Thurman. I had him on my preliminary team for H1, but dropped him for Thomas Doe, and glad I did, as unfortunately Curran was taken out in the second corner of the LCQ and had no chance of coming back to make that main. The KTM rider made 6 main events in the East Division last season, finishing as high as 11th at SLC 6. I expect to see him in the main more often than not this season and consistently contending for top 15s. Moving on to the 450 class, I am here once again asking you to please pick Marvin Musquin. One of only 3 All-Stars to max out at H1. Despite my high praise in the H1 preview video, he was only on 17.4% of teams by the time the gates dropped. The biggest upside for Marv is his ability to just go out and log the laps he needed, something that pretty much everyone training under Alden Baker seems to do. He loses a tiny bit of value at a 3 handicap, but the great thing about Marv is how high his floor is. If you were one of the many burned by Webb, Osborne, Sexton, Anderson, and Eli Tomac, then you know how powerful a consistent guy can be. Worst case, Marv gets around 7th, which would still bring home 19 points. It's hard to pick a 450 guy that you should look here because I think most teams are going to have 3 of the same 5 guys. All 5 All-Stars that missed max points in round 1 are now somehow eligible for double points. Anderson, Osborne, Sexton, and Tomac are all poised to score a boatload of points, but out of the group, I want you to look at Cooper Webb. The big takeaway from Cooper is that despite all of the issues that may have set in round 1, he still battled back to finish just 1 spot away from that All-Star status. And because of that, he has the highest likelihood of becoming an All-Star for round 3. This is quite possibly the only chance you'll get to pick the 2019 champion and be eligible for double points. Don't let his 13th in the qualifying scare you. That's just how Cooper rolls. In fact, he's the one guy that somehow, the worse he qualifies, it feels like the better he races. The FFL, or first to the finish line, is an optional wager where you attempt to guess who will be the rider to cross the finish line for the very first time in each main event. Get it right and earn 15 extra points for your race score, but if you miss, you are paying 7 back to the bank. I completely whiffed the FFL last week as Kenny was just short and Faulkner was never really there. Faulkner just doesn't seem to be the same rider this year, and maybe that's a good thing for his title hopes, but it's a bad thing for fantasy FFLs. Technically, RGI Hampshire took the 250 FFL at H1, but let's be honest, no one looked better up front early than Christian Craig. Star Racing number 29 was the fastest qualifying, won both his heat and his main event, and was out front early in both of them. With the track layout being basically the same as last but ran in reverse, where you're going to have twice as much time for Craig to put a move on somebody in the event that somebody does get the first jump. Christian the man is already a great starter, and you're going to put him on that Mercedes Petronas of Moto. It's going to be hard to take him down this season. In the 450s, Barcia was out front early and often all day, sweeping the race from bell to bell in both his heat and his main, and from what we saw on Saturday night, it would be hard to pick against him. But I still like long-term results over the recency bias, so I'm sticking with Kenny as my go-to guy until Barcia can do it again. Kenny was just a tick behind Barcia in both races, but remember, he took 5 of the first 9 FFLs in 2020. Kenny seems to have renewed some sort of energy this year and just has a different glow, and maybe that is exactly what he needs to be the guy this year. My way too early team looks like this. I have Colt Nichols as my 250 All-Star because he seems the slow and steady guy in this year's All-Star class. I expect him to minimize mistakes and finish in the top 5 over and over. I have Grant Harlan for the reasons we talked about before, and I'm pairing him with John Short at a 3 who finished a quiet 11th at H1. He was a late addition to the Barx Suzuki team, and I expect him to only get better as the season wears on and he gets more comfortable with that bike. And add in Kevin Moran's at a 6 handicap to the team. Where last round the guys that 9 to 12 really shined, this round I think the move is going to be lower handicap, and Moran's is a perfect fit after his 13th at H1. On the 450s, I have Ken Roczen because I can't take Marv. Kenny gets the starts and is consistently the biggest threat year after year early in the season. A 1 is a little risky here, but I'm just simply a believer. I currently have him paired with Cooper Webb at a -1, Zach Osborne at a -1, and Eli Tomac at a -1. This is a boring ass 450 team, but there is no easier way to guarantee that you're gonna have all of your guys in the main, and that's really what I'm looking for. I think the play will be to take 2 of these 5 guys that lost all-star status this weekend and pair it with a high handicap guy and just hope that you pick the right 2. Tuesday race is a little later in the program, with Race Day Live hitting the Peacock app at 2:30 Eastern, followed by the heat races at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Peacock, but on tape delay on NBCSN at 10:30 p. Eastern time for all you cable folk out there. Be sure to look out for the cheat sheet on Twitter and Instagram at RotoX Fantasy about an hour before the gates drop, and consider joining the Patreon if you are wanting access to those enhanced cheat sheets that were previewed at H1 to the public, but will be a Patreon exclusive for the rest of the season. Also, don't miss the Roto Moto live fantasy support group immediately following the race. It will be a late one, so no shame if you can't make it. We will be live at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time until about 12:30 a.m. into Wednesday morning. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the patrons that are already supporting the channel, such as Michael Treese, B Hood, and L Chaser. Thank you guys so much for making this channel possible. And for everybody else, thank you so much for watching Roto Moto. My name is Donnie, and I will see you guys on race day.